This year, the year of our Lord, circa 2024, we were delightfully treated to another dystopian Avengers future storyline in the form of Avengers Twilight. It had been a while since we were treated to something like this, and this time the creative team of Chip Zdarsky, Daniel Acuta, and Corey Petit knocked it out of the park. Following an old and initially depowered Captain America, this story takes place after an event called H-Day, when Ultron and the Red Skull used the Incredible Hulk to launch a brutal attack and wipe out most of the Avengers. They then managed to turn the public against the remaining heroes in the aftermath, and the survivors retire. Now, in this dystopian future, the son of Iron Man and the Wasp is given control over the superhero forces by the government, and the country basically becomes a police state. In classic superhero fashion, the story focuses on the retired Captain America pulling together the remaining Avengers alongside some new heroes to bring down the fascist government. Now, casual fans of the X-Men may think of Kitty Pryde as an awesome member of the team, if not something of a younger sister to her teammates. But make no mistake, Shadowcat can truly bring the terror. Following the decimation of the new team of X-Men during Orchis' attack on the mutant nation of Krakoa, the mutants are in shambles. During the very same issue, Kate Pryde falls through one of the Orchis overtaken Krakoan gates to the Israeli Krakoan embassy, where she is surrounded by Orchis troops. She takes the life of every single Orchis soldier in incredibly brutal fashion. For those of you who don't know, there was a time where Kate Pryde was mentored by the ninja master known as Ogun, but we haven't seen a display of what she had learned quite like what we get here. She literally starts the fight off by phasing a guy's blam blam through his own head. From here on out, she went full Shadowcat and held nothing back, and it is spectacular. Now, while we're on the topic of recent stories that involve the X-Men, I think it's safe to say that no one expected the awesomeness that was Sins of Sinister. Basically, in the Krakoan era, the villain and mutant geneticist Mr. Sinister is given a second chance on this new mutant nation. Mr. Sinister finds a way to give himself control over the entire mutant population using the mutant resurrection protocols to essentially brainwash and control everyone. Sinister's ways push the Marvel Universe into a dystopian timeline, one that we get to see play out over the span of 3 different eras. And what happens within those 1,000 years is crazier than anyone was ready for, with mutant chimeras spliced together with multiple different powers, a whole religion of nightcrawlers, and the Juggernaut who goes hurtling through space for 1,000 years until being used as a bullet to wipe out Thanos. The whole event was fantastic, as it gave us awesome alternate futures where the craziest of things happen. In the finale of the 2011 5-issue miniseries Thor First Thunder, a new origin for Thor came to us when he shows up in New York City. This is an unhinged and uncontrolled Thor, as Loki has taken over his brother's mind to make him commit some pretty heinous acts. In the climactic fight in the destroyed remnants of Manhattan, Thor and Loki basically wipe out the Fantastic Four and Spider-Man. Reed Richards is trapped in an unsolvable mathematical equation that drives him insane. Johnny Storm is sent to Jotunheim, the realm of the Frost Giants. The Invisible Woman has her powers reversed, but the worst thing comes for the Thing and Spider-Man. Shooting a web at Thor's hammer, Thor just throws his hammer all the way into space, where Spider-Man quickly succumbs to the oxygen-free environment. And when the hammer returns, Thor uses his hammer to knock the bottom half of the Thing's jaw clean off of his face. Now, that was a pretty brutal story, but if we want to talk brutal, Thor isn't typically the character we go to. More often, incredibly brutal moments belong to characters like the Punisher, or in this case, Moon Knight. During Charlie Huston's 2006 run, Mark Spector is in a wheelchair, and in the second issue, Mark recalls how he ended up there. In a flashback, Mark and what is arguably his #1 nemesis, Bushmaster, brutally fight along some rooftops until Bushmaster savagely throws Mark off of the roof, and he comes crashing down, bouncing off of fire escapes, and breaking not one, but both of his knees. It's rough. Bushmaster comes in hot for the final blow on what he thinks is a defeated Moon Knight, only for Mark to land multiple crescent darts deep in the villain's neck. The anti-hero then climbs on top of his nemesis, and using another crescent moon, he relieves Bushmaster of his face. Now, some things that Moon Knight does can be argued as justified, but this one, there was pleasure under that hood, like for sure. Spider-Man is a cornerstone of Marvel Comics. Some may argue that he is their most popular character. This icon John has gone through a ton, but one of the ones that no one was really ready for was when he was completely wiped out. In the Ultimate Universe's Death of Spider-Man storyline, running from Ultimate Spider-Man number 153 and culminating in Ultimate Spider-Man number 160, this story was a pioneer in comics, not only for laying low one of the greatest heroes Marvel has, not to mention the fact that Ultimate Spider-Man was an absolute smash hit, but because it's also one of the very few times that a superhero actually passes away and hands off the torch to another. In this case, Miles Morales. On top of that, the story was actually really good and ended in an incredibly brutal fight that brought the web-slinger to an end that actually did him justice. It was beautiful. But speaking of characters who pass away in massive comic book moments, we also have Captain Marvel. Mar-Vell of the Kree was Marvel Comics' original Captain Marvel, and he was also the first Marvel superhero to permanently pass away when he succumbed to cancer in 1982's The Death of Captain Marvel. That was a huge moment in comic book history, and he remains to be one of the only heroes to have passed away and not been resurrected. That alone could be the point, but the character has reappeared as visions or in flashbacks and obviously in alternate realities. One of the coolest and most unexpected ways he did reappear was in the alternate universe which became known as the Cancerverse. Basically, on his infamous deathbed, the many Angled Ones contacted and corrupted the dying Mar-Vell, granting him new powers which he used to transmute the other heroes, and with Mar-Vell as their lord, they completely took down the Avatar of Death, which in turn completely destroyed death itself, stopping people from ever actually passing away. The 90s were a rough time for comics, and to help fight the abysmal sales both Marvel and DC were facing at this time, the two companies staged a crossover. When two entities known as the Brothers, the embodiments of both the Marvel and DC multiverses, remembered each other's existence, they pitted combatants from their respective realities against each other to decide who was better and who should be destroyed. This gave us the 1996 series simply called DC vs. Marvel. DC vs. Marvel was shameless fan service, but no one cared because it was super cool. As a solution to the conflict, the Living Tribunal from Marvel and the Spectre from DC joined forces and combined the two universes together, creating the Amalgam Universe. A crossover like this hasn't happened before, and it probably won't ever happen again. Amazing Spider-Man number 700.3 gave us one of the most horrifying Spider-Man scenes to date. The issue gets off to a start as the wall crawler takes on Russell Brockstall, Firebrand. Now I don't know if you know, but fire and spiders don't normally go together. By his own admission, Spidey in this story is completely off of his game, apparently from eating too much of Aunt May's pie. After one too many quips pushes him over the line, Firebrand unleashes his full power. Now fair warning, the art here is not for the faint of heart. There is a close-up of Peter's face as Firebrand turns up the heat, firstly showing his Spidey costume burning away, followed by his actual skin crackling and burning. Parker actually survives all of this and manages to crawl out of the rubble with his skin literally melting. There is no doubt that this would have been the end for our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man if not for the swift arrival of paramedics who managed to find his body and take him to the hospital. And ending off our list today, we are going back to more recent stories. Specifically, we are talking Avengers X-Men Eternals Judgment Day. This event from Karen Gillan follows a couple of things. The mutants gaining immortality with their resurrection protocols, the Avengers learning Celestial secrets from their new base inside a fallen Celestial, and the Eternals learning that mutants are actually closely tied to their mortal enemies, the Deviants. It leads to an absolutely massive conflict between the mutants and the Eternals, with the Avengers trying to come in between. While the arrival of Uranos could take this spot, during the mentioned Judgment Day, the whole population of the Earth is literally judged by the progenitor Celestial, which was awoken by the Avengers and a faction of rebelling Eternals. This massively powerful godlike being starts passing judgment on everyone, from everyday people to superheroes to villains like Doctor Doom. They all do everything they can to try and turn the tide. Despite all of that, the progenitor deems them unworthy and literally begins eradicating everyone, like with no qualms. It's really cool, you should give it a read. That's the list. Thank you guys so much for watching today on Top 10 Nerd. I'm Adam Andrews. I will catch you all on the flippy flop, but until then, make sure to stay safe, and of course, peace out, nerds.